Hey, Polly.
Hey Greg, how are you?
I am super excited. Your hard work has paid off.
Really?
Yes.
What's going on today?
Today, we are being joined by Chris Herren.
The Chris Herren?
The Chris Herren
Oh
of
my
Heron
goodness.
Project, Heron Talks. Chris
Excellent.
Herren.
Awesome.
So I know we've got a lot of questions for Chris. We've been trying to get him on for a while, and
He's a busy guy.
he's very busy with a lot of the work that he's doing, and I'm hoping that he talks about some of that work as well.
Yeah, I can't wait.
Yeah, me either. So without further ado,
Awesome.
today joining us on Totally Preventable, we have Chris Herren. Chris, how are you doing today?
I'm well, thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Our pleasure. This is the Chris Herren from Heron.
Yes.
All right. This is it. This is it. All right.
It's interesting. I know you from Heron Project and not basketball. I mean, I'm not a sports fan at all. So it's when people are like, "Oh, Chris Herren, he was great basketball, blah blah." I'm like, yeah, I don't know. I don't know anything about basketball.
Things probably should just keep to herself.
Right. I did want to do this interview like as a game of horse, though. I thought that would be fun.
I like that. Yeah.
A little bit different. All right. So Chris, we have so many questions for you, but we love what you're doing with the community around awareness around drug misuse. And we know most people know your story, but could you tell us a little bit about currently what you're doing with the Heron Project?
So Heron Project has been, active and busy for over a decade now, almost 13 years. We have thousands and thousands of people who are active within it. We have peer groups, preventative groups, running groups, and on top of all that, it kind of piggybacks off of my talks. Over the last 15 years, I do roughly 200 to 250 talks a year. 200 of them up primarily schools. My focus at Heron Project was real simple in the beginning, right? I just wanted to give somebody an opportunity the way I was given one. So I wanted to create funding for people who are at a disadvantage and who can't find their way into a treatment center. And with that, over the last 12, 13 years, we've branched out into so many other areas. And something that, I'm unbelievably proud of, that, Heron Project, like you said, you don't know me for basketball, you know me for Heron Project. And, it's just been an unbelievable experience. And like you said in the beginning, as I sit here at 16 years sober, I'm here because of the kindness, the selflessness, the giving of another family, and I wouldn't be here if I wasn't given that opportunity. I truly believe that. So, over the last 12 years, I think we've given almost 5,000 of those scholarships to people all across the country, and now with giving scholarships and sober living and all the preventative and awareness that we create within schools, it's truly special.
Mm-hmm. And those scholarships are for people to attend sober living?
Sober living.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, building Heron Project, you mentioned like 13 years. Building Heron, what were some of the barriers that you came across and things that might have made you feel like, am I doing the right thing, or is this too much for me to handle? What were some of those barriers that helped you?
Honestly, I've always kept the mission just one, so it was just, to me, it was always about helping the next one.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously a decade ago, the stigma, the shame, not many people were really excited about engaging and supporting, to where now, it's it's beautiful. It's beautiful how much change has taken place over the last 10, 15 years. You know, I will say from a personal standpoint, right? Like it's, I got to take care of me, right? I always have to put me out in front, and, you know, my recovery comes first. And, you know, there's been times where, you know, whether it's Heron Talks, Heron Project, Heron Wellness, you know, I kind of get lost a little bit. You know, I get a little lost in all of it. And I have to kind of simplify and realize that, you know, I'm the one. I'm still the one. And, you know, it's, although I want to help as many people as possible, you know, I'm still one of them.
Is that hard to do? Like, yeah, because I know it's like you have the heart, you want to just help everyone, and you got to remember to put yourself first before you can actually help other people. Is it hard sometimes for you to do that?
It is, you know, I struggle with that. And not so much that I don't want to help myself. I think what comes up is you forget yourself. You know, like you're so engaged in helping others that you forget that you know, you have to help you. You know, and I've built something incredibly beautiful. I mean, if you told me 15 years ago this would be my life today, I would have never ever guessed it. You know, that would have been a Disney movie for me, for where I'm sitting today.
Where would you have expected yourself to be if you had to have?
I just think I would have sold myself short. I don't think, and I think that's typically part of the problem with substance use and addiction, right? I think, you know, I didn't even believe that sobriety could give me this. I had no idea. You know, I had no idea what sobriety was going to give me. I had no idea the path recovery would put me on. Again, I couldn't look that far down the road, and I couldn't dream that big. So, you know, I kept it simple in the beginning, and I did what I needed to do, and doors kept opening, and it's kind of organically blossomed into this beautiful company around recovery.
When did you realize that, you know, this is something bigger than just me? Like you mentioned how you're putting yourself first. I can see a lot of people who would say, you know, just my recovery, I have to, you know, the next day, I have to do the next right thing the next day. But when did it become a thing for you? Like, you know what? I have to open the doors and give this to more people. What was that like?
You know, I think when I fell in love with the 12 steps, right? And on that little medallion, it says service work. You know, I truly believe that service work is one of my main pillars of giving me the last 16 years. No matter what, I cannot pull service work out of my life because it saved my life. But again, it's hard when you're, and I try to say this with as much humility as possible. But it's hard when you're the front person, right? Because, you know, there's people you're looking behind to help, and sometimes there's nobody there to help you, right? And that's what you have to do. You have to create. I've had to create a network of people who turn around and grab me as well.
So I know you've talked to, oh, I forgot the stat now, 2 million kids,
Yep.
and young, yeah, is that right? Over the
Million.
course of your career. What advice do you have for parents? Like, I am the mother of 4 young adults, and I am gonna knock on some wood here that we've had some good conversations, but it's tough, especially when kids ask you about your past. Like me, you know, Mom, you never drank when you were underage, you know, those kind of questions. What kind of advice do you have for parents with younger kids?
Yeah, I think the conversation is critical. I think to really open it up and not just focus on drugs and alcohol, but like, as you said in the beginning, just the wellness piece of it, you know, the emotional piece of this, the self-esteem, the self-worth that plays a factor in this. You know, it's amazing, right? A couple of million kids, and parents very rarely ask why. You know, parents when their kid comes home or they suspect their kid is misusing or whatever it is, they want to know where'd they get it, who were they with, how much did they do, and when did they do it? And parents never ask why. And it's amazing, right? Like why is in your soul and it's in your heart. And I think more parents need to challenge and ask, discovering the why.
Wow.
Do you ever do a parent talk? Have you done?
Oh gosh, yeah, yes, I do. Yeah, I do. You know, typically like this week I'm in New Jersey. I'll do 4 high schools and a couple of night events, community events.
Okay.
And you know, what's nice is when I first started doing this, interestingly enough, I would walk into schools and I would tell my story, my very personal story. And kids would go home and say, hey, you need to go see this guy tonight. And then all of a sudden I changed my story. I started talking about the first day. I started talking about the emotional piece of this and the self-esteem piece and the peer piece of this process.
You've shared that you spoke with 2 million kids, 250 talking engagements a year for countless years. Was it difficult for you the first time to open up and to share your story? Like, was that had to be like, oh my goodness.
Listen, it's still difficult. I'd be lying if I told you it's still not extremely challenging and difficult. And to be honest with you, it's kind of like something that I've set a bar for myself, that if I ever become too comfortable, I need to step away. Right? I need to walk away if I'm too good at this, if I'm too comfortable at this, if I'm too settled in it. You know, as many speaking events as I do, I still have that feeling in my heart that I'm as an adult, I've been given an amazing responsibility to present in front of children, right? Like kids go to school and you know, I'm a stranger. I'm someone that they don't know, they've never met, and that school puts that auditorium in my hands, and it's an amazing responsibility. And you know, who knows who I'll impact that day. But again, the one thing that I've always stood by is it's just one kid, man. If I can help one kid, if I can prevent one parent from feeling the pain and suffering that my parents felt, one sibling, you know, that's kind of what I aim for when I walk in.
Do you think that if you stunk at basketball, you would still be where you are today? Do you think the path would have still eventually come this way?
I don't. And I say this, in this context. I think, you know, for so many years, I was embarrassed of what I lost as an athlete, right? I was so embarrassed of how I was not able to attain. I was so close. And, you know, I look at the Celtics and the Nuggets and, you know, I know that it could have been so much better, right? And I really never like to talk about it or face it, but the truth is, all the work I did as a child, all the work I did as a teenager, all the work I did as an adult around the game of basketball has given me this platform. This platform is here because of that. You know, there are so many people that could step out in front and tell their story. I just got extremely fortunate that ESPN wanted to do a documentary and a couple of publishing houses wanted to write a couple of books. And because of that, you know, it's given me this platform to share and to be open about not only addiction, but the recovery process as well.
In your opinion, what's the difference between the work ethic of sobriety and the work ethic of getting into the league?
I think that discipline, I think that extra that I did all those years. When most kids didn't want to do it, I was still doing it. When most kids were outside playing, I was inside of a gym. You know, when most kids want to go home, I stayed late. I've been able in the last 16 years to make that applicable to recovery, right? Like that work ethic, that drive is still instilled in me. And I've put that into my recovery big time. I think they go hand in hand, to be quite honest with you.
All right.
Mhm.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that analogy as well. Really does. You know, if the kids are doing that, if they're putting in that work ethic, you know, when their other kids are going off to do something risky, you're staying home,
Yeah.
doing that extra assignment or that extra credit or whatever it is, but you're keeping yourself away from that. I love that analogy.
You know, but I also think it's important, right? I don't think we challenge our kids socially enough. I don't think we challenge them. I don't think we challenge them socially. I don't think we check in emotionally. I think we kind of just hold our breath often as parents and just kind of hope that it all works itself out. I think kids need to be challenged in that space. I think kids need to look at the impact, not just, you know, okay, you're going to overdose, you're going to get arrested, you're going to get put in jail, you're going to lose your life. You're going to break your parents' heart, man. Like the people who love you, like they're going to really struggle with this. So I think it's kind of covering the whole spectrum with children about addiction. You know, I think that's extremely important. I think, you know, I can walk into a school and tell my story, and for years, for 7-8 years, I would get an email about my story. And I would get a Instagram message about my story. My story's been told. I want to hear their story. I want to listen. I want a kid to tell me who they are, what they're going through, what they're struggling with, what their challenges are. And that's why in the last, you know, 7-8 years, I switched the presentation and I switched it drastically.
Do you think it is getting easier or harder for kids in society these days?
I mean, honestly, I think it's embarrassing that as adults, we haven't done more for kids. I mean, I can't even wrap my head around how, like, health and wellness is not a core class in school. Like, how is that not up to par with math, science, history, English, foreign language? You know, every kid should walk into school every single day and should be challenged in that space, should be checked in that about that space. So to answer your question, I think we've gotten worse. I don't think we do enough. I think what's amazing is I think most adults would sit back, and if they answered honestly, they would say they're thankful they're not a kid today. They're thankful that they're not growing up the way these kids are growing up. Well, what are we doing to support that? You know, what are we doing? Knowing that these kids have it harder, whether it's self-harm, bullying, suicide, depression, mental health, you know, all of it, technology, what are we doing? You know, what are we doing to support that? What are we doing to help them navigate their way through this life that we're thankful we didn't have to live? And the truth is, most curriculums throughout the country, they don't support that. You know, they do their, you know, health class sophomore year to check in, and then they check out. You know, I think kids in elementary school should be walking into that building and getting coping skills, life skills, whether it's holistic care, learning experiences, is breath work and meditation and all of that stuff. These kids should have that opportunity, and we failed them there.
I agree. I feel like there's too much emphasis on other educational classes that, I mean, I took 4 years of French and it has not helped my life in any way. You know, maybe some wellness classes would have helped me in my, you know, in my high school years. I wouldn't go back to high school for $1 million. I don't think. No way.
$1 million.
$1 million? No, not with social media and all the bullying now. No way. I don't think I would. I don't know.
So
it's tough. It's tough to navigate.
Now, with organizations such as Heron and, you know, the many organizations out there that are trying to do so much to help, how do you get youth engagement? How do you get youth buy-in? Because as we see, like as you mentioned, you know, they're not getting in the schools, but there are organizations like Heron that are offering these different programs and resources and services to help kids. But how do you get that child buy-in, that youth buy-in?
I think it's a change at the very, very top. Like again, for youth buy-in, and I think still it's going to be challenging. But if a kid walks into school every day from K through 12, and they know that they're going to have a class that pertains to their own mental health, their wellness, learning about, you know, education around prevention. I think kids will buy in. I think it's got to be from the beginning. I think they have to have that. We have to set it up that these kids are learning these tools, these coping skills, the awareness, the ability to communicate about this from the very, very beginning. Listen, our organizations do phenomenal work, but we're not there enough. We're not in there, you know, like it has to be in the school, in my opinion. You know, now mind you, we do phenomenal work and we impact a lot of kids, but the truth is there could be a lot more. And I think they have the audience.
Right.
I walk into a school and I do a presentation, and it will probably be the one, maybe two presentation of the year about drugs and alcohol, about mental health, self-esteem, self-worth. That's a one-time deal. And trust me, I've done this long enough that I walk into some schools all across the country and I know this is a one-time deal. I know that that's how they see me. I know that's how they see the presentation. I mean, my experience doing this, I walk into high schools and I won't even meet the principal.
Wow.
The principal won't even come out of his office, her office, and say, hey, hi. So it just shows you the level of buy-in that some of these schools, some of these communities have around this topic.
Yeah, I see it as well as a lot of families. You see now that so many don't even want to address the fact that there is mental illness, you know, in their families, or that they're struggling themselves. There's this big machismo that, you know, I can deal with it. I could work my way through it. And so you can see if there's not buy-in at home sometimes as well, that the kids are not going to be as engaged. Because, you know, if I see dad struggling and he says he can work through it, I can definitely work through it too. And it's not the case. So I can see what you mean.
Listen, I believe 100% buy-in at home, right? But not every kid has a home that's bought in.
Right.
So as community, as educators, it's almost forced upon them, right? Like there's too many kids in this country that go home and their parents aren't paying attention, man. They're non-existent, they're absent, they're not involved. But school, it's an equal playing field for that. And we can set that up for those kids every time they walk into a building and know you might not get it at home, but we're going to give it to you here.
Yeah.
So how do we get schools and administration and I guess the Department of Education, I guess it would have to start there. How do we get them on board? I'm all for fighting.
Yeah, totally. I've given up, and I shouldn't say this, right? I haven't given up. I haven't given up.
Thoroughly given up.
No. But you know, like when I first got sober and I was probably 5-10 years in, I would get calls from senators and congressmen come visit us in the Capitol, and we'll do these sessions and we'll meet individually. And I just didn't see much happening, right? So I said to myself, I'm not going to put my energy into that space. I'm going to put my energy into the kids. I'm going to put my energy into the preventative space. You know, there definitely needs that part, right? But we have to get in front of the right people, and the people that we get in front of have to be able to make the right decision. And unfortunately, I haven't seen that. You know, what's interesting is the private schools in this country, schools that charge tuition, they have sound health and wellness curriculum. You know, like they have a part of their campus of a building that's just dedicated to substance misuse or mental health. They have everybody in place. They've changed it oftentimes. It's our public school system that has to change.
Mhm.
What do you, or how do you confront those not in my backyard type of attitudes? It's not
Mhm.
happening in the neighborhood.
Yeah. That's wild, man. Those days are long gone. You
Oh,
know?
yeah.
Sad. Listen, I say it because it's not sadly, right? It's reality. And for some reason, for 100 years, we pointed the finger that it was over there. It wasn't here. And that no longer works, right? It's everywhere.
Right.
And I say this gently, you know, I get in front of a lot of private schools, and the amount of kids reaching out for help and support equals public schools. You know, so the days of, you know, not in my backyard are over. And to me, you know, and I say this when I speak, as a parent, right? As a parent, the scariest thing about suffering from addiction is nobody knows who's going to suffer.
Right.
You don't know.
Mhm.
You have no idea. You have no clue it's your kid. When that little boy is in Little League, when that little boy's kicking around a soccer ball or shooting hoops in the driveway, you have no idea that it's going to be your little boy. It's going to be your little girl who struggles. And the truth is, there's parents that have done everything right. And it's their child. You know, I've seen parents who are absent, not involved, not great parents, and their kids are perfect. You know, they don't struggle with this disease. You know, maybe someday genetically we'd be able to identify this child is highly likely to struggle with drugs and alcohol when they get older. You know, we're not there yet. And therefore, to me, that's what speaks volumes, right? Is that we're kind of in dark when it comes to our kids. You know, we don't know. So do more. Do more to give that kid a better chance of never struggling.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Give that kid more and build preventative work and a lot of reacting to this.
Do you feel that you would have had addiction issues if you hadn't gotten injured?
I do, yeah. So my addiction, the whole process started for me when I was little, right? Before I started in a lot of ways.
Mhm.
You know, I grew up in a home that suffered from alcoholism. I have generations of family who struggle with alcoholism. You know, my process started before I started in a lot of ways. I believe that.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, I found it, and that gave me that temporary relief
Mhm.
from what I was struggling. You know, I often say all the time, you know, as a child, it broke my heart. Like I can say this honestly, it broke my heart how important alcohol was to my dad. Like it broke my spirit. I watched my mom struggle with his misuse, with his alcoholism. And as a boy, I could never figure out why are Miller Lights so important in his life?
Mhm.
And the truth is, at 13, 14 years old, I joined them. I started drinking the beer I hated as a child. And to me, that's the ultimate red flag. It's the ultimate red flag. It is the red flag that screams out, come get me. Come get me now and help me. So basketball did not, in my opinion, if basketball did anything for me, it made my addiction harder, you know, because it gave me access to so much.
Yeah. And we hear a lot of young kids, get injured on the field or on the court. And
Oh God, yeah.
yeah.
I mean, that's definitely the journey for some, for
Yeah.
sure.
And the push is so great often by parents to become something great, so let's get them back on the court, the field quicker.
Yeah. Sad.
It is sad. It is.
Keep them smiling, man. Keep them smiling. That's what's up.
Right.
If you got a smile, if you got a kid out there smiling, you're doing the right thing. And now in today's climate, in where we're at, going back to saying, like, is it harder? Fentanyl wasn't in pills when I was using. Fentanyl wasn't in cocaine. Fentanyl wasn't in Xanax. Fentanyl is in everything now. So if your child is engaging, I don't care, unfortunately, there's this idea that you're better if you're just swallowing the pill. You're in a better space. Well, those days are over because there's a chance they're going to die from that pill. And I don't think families react quick enough to a child or a young adult or a loved one that is taking a chance at dying in their life. And I mean that, like, with all my heart. Like, the truth is, and it hurts me to say this, I woke up every single day for a decade, and every day I walked out of my house, I knew that I might never come back to it. I might never walk back in that door, man. I might be in a parking lot. I might be slumped over a wheel. I might never come back. Although my intentions were to come back in 20 minutes. I knew walking out that door that there was a chance I wasn't coming back. And not to point the finger, but nobody ever framed it that way to me.
Right.
Nobody ever framed that, like, why are you willing to chase death for that? Why are you willing, with this beautiful family behind you, to take a chance at dying? And I think early intervention today is critical. I think if we can get out in front of kids early, talk about it, address it, that is huge in this process. I don't like words like rock bottom. I think they're horrible. I think the word rock bottom is unnecessary. I think it's callous. I think it's cold. I think it does not describe somebody who's struggling from addiction with this disease. I think it's prevented people from getting in the race or the fight earlier, because there's this misconception that you have to lose everything in order to come back. And I see every single day, I watch people come into this wellness center in Seacon in different stages of their life. And I think for years, people would say, like, well, they haven't suffered enough. So let's wait till they suffer a little more, and maybe they'll get it.
Wow. Now, you have one student, you're leaving out of the building. Yeah, one nugget to leave this kid. What nugget do you leave them?
And I just give them a little high five and a hug, man. Tell the kid I love him and I'm out. That's what it's all about, Because people ask me that question all the time. People will say to me, if you could say one word to yourself when you were 14, 15, 16, what would you say? And I said, I wouldn't say anything. I'd give them a hug, man. So that's the language I'm speaking.
There we go. The power of a gesture. I love it.
We do hear a lot from parents. Oh, I experimented when I was a kid. I did that, let kids be kids. But I don't think parents realize the playing field is different, that fentanyl is such a big force out there, and experimenting once could be the last time. But we do hear that a lot.
No, the other thing I would say to that, though, is, right, because fentanyl and heroin and overdoses have dominated the culture and the headlines. And the reality is most people seeking help for substance misuse is seeking it for alcohol, right? The people that have lived here in this center in the last 7 years have been seeking help from alcohol, right? That being said, the scariest thing I see today as someone who is responsible for 40 lives on a regular basis here, is marijuana psychosis. Marijuana psychosis is the scariest thing I see today. And marijuana psychosis primarily comes out in young adults. And I can't tell you, as a father of a 25, a 23, and a 16-year-old, you know, I'll go to bed and I'll pray that my kids never go through that process. And I see it often here, and it's devastating. And unfortunately, kids don't know enough about that. Parents don't know enough about it. Parents have no idea. Like, if there's a parent that's going to sit back and say, "How I smoked a joint," well, like your joint is different,
Right.
your marijuana is different.
Yes.
You know, like those days are over. Every single drug kids engage in today is 1,000 times more powerful. It's unbelievable, the potency and and unfortunately parents are still slow to that. You know, well, I did that as a kid, but it's a different time.
Yeah.
It is a different
The
time.
sad part is the 1,000 times more potent is probably an understatement in many of the drugs that are out there. I mean, it's
Oh gosh, yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
What was the last thing you got at Clemens Market?
Oh gosh, Clements is my place.
I have
love
been waiting
Clements.
to see you since I saw you speak last. I've been like, every time I go there, where's Chris? And I haven't seen
Hey,
him.
listen, you can, if you're gonna find me anywhere in Portsmouth, you're gonna find me at Clements. That is my place.
Yeah.
From the ladies, the older ladies in the checkout to the meat department. Like, I love Clements Markets is my hangout.
Are you like, you know, giving the Miss America wave as you walk through?
No, but you know what? You know what's so nice about Clements? It happened to me yesterday. I was in Clements, and you know, because of the work that has been done over the years, there was a woman. She's probably in her mid-60s, maybe early 70s, and I hug her and I say hello to her every time I see her. But I'm going through her counter, and she said, "Hey, is there any chance I can talk to you about helping my son?" You know, and my son's in his 40s and he's struggling. You know, that's where it's at.
Right.
Like that's the beauty of all of this.
wow.
It is. Well, we're so excited that we finally got you. It felt like we've been trying forever.
Yes,
250 talks a year.
thank you.
Man, it's busy.
How many podcasts a year, though?
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you so much.
Thank you, Chris. It was great having you.
Yeah, thank you. Have a great day.
You
as
too.
well.